Did you know that the richest person to ever walk this earth wasn't a tech billionaire, an oil tycoon, or a modern industrialist? He didn't wear a tailored suit or ring a stock exchange bell. He lived more than 700 years ago, ruled from the heart of West Africa, and possessed so much wealth that historians still struggle to describe it in numbers. His name was Mansa Musa, and when this man went on a religious pilgrimage, he didn't just make history, he bent the global economy around him. Entire nations felt the consequences of his generosity long after he had passed through. Gold lost its value, markets trembled, chroniclers stood in disbelief. Yet here's the unsettling truth. Despite being the wealthiest human being who ever lived, most people today have never heard his name. So we have to ask an uncomfortable question. Why do we know the names of European kings who ruled smaller lands with far less power, yet remain ignorant of an African emperor whose influence reshaped the medieval world? The answer says less about Mansa Musa and far more about how history has been told. To understand him, we must return to the 14th century, to a time when the center of the world's wealth did not lie in Europe, but deep within West Africa. In 1312, Mansa Musa ascended the throne of the Mali Empire. What he inherited was not just territory, but one of the most powerful economic engines on Earth. Mali stretched across vast regions of modern-day West Africa, lands rich not only in resources, but in culture, trade, and knowledge. This empire sat atop the world's most valuable supply of gold. During Musa's reign, Mali produced more than half of all the gold known to the Old World. Half. Gold that flowed into North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. Gold that backed currencies, financed kingdoms, and shaped global trade. Alongside gold was salt, so valuable in the medieval world that it was sometimes traded ounce for ounce. Salt preserved food, sustained life, and crossed the Sahara in massive caravans of camels that moved like rivers through the desert. Mali controlled both, and because of that, Mali controlled the world. But Mansa Musa understood something that many rulers never do. Wealth alone does not make a civilization great. Without knowledge, it fades. Without culture, it fractures. So instead of ruling only as a king of commerce, he chose to rule as a builder of minds. Under his leadership, Timbuktu became more than a trading city. It became a symbol, a beacon, a place where ideas mattered. The University of Sankora rose as one of the great centers of learning on the planet. Its libraries housed hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, works on astronomy, medicine, mathematics, philosophy, law, and poetry. At a time when many European cities owned only a handful of books, Timbuktu overflowed with them. Scholars traveled from across Africa and the Islamic world to study there. They debated the movement of stars, the structure of the human body, the nature of justice and faith. This was not a forgotten corner of the world. This was intellectual brilliance in full bloom. And then, in 1324, Mansa Musa decided to do something that would ensure his name echoed across continents. He set out on the pilgrimage to Mecca, but this was no ordinary journey. It was a procession so vast, so breathtaking, that it seemed almost unreal. Imagine the desert horizon swallowed by movement, 60,000 people traveling together, soldiers, officials, scholars, doctors, teachers, storytellers singing of Mali's glory, 12,000 servants dressed in fine silk, each carrying gold. Camels, 80 of them, each burdened with gold dust, some carrying hundreds of pounds. And everywhere Mansa Musa went, he gave gold to the poor, gold to scholars and religious leaders, gold to merchants, to cities, to strangers who simply crossed his path. He built mosques. He funded schools. He freed slaves as acts of faith. He transformed generosity into spectacle and devotion into legacy. When he reached Cairo, one of the greatest cities on earth, even its wealth was dwarfed by his presence. Musa gave away so much gold that the market collapsed. The value of gold fell so sharply that Egypt's economy suffered for over a decade. Think about that. One man, one journey, 12 years of economic consequence. Historians recorded their awe. Al-Umari wrote of a king so generous that people struggled to describe him without disbelief. A ruler of unimaginable wealth, yet marked by humility, faith, and restraint. And when Musa realized the damage his generosity had caused, he did something unheard of. He borrowed gold at high interest, not because he lacked it, but because he had given too much away. There is perhaps no clearer symbol of who he was. So how wealthy was Mansa Musa? Modern estimates range from $400 billion to numbers so large they become meaningless. But the truth is this: his wealth cannot be calculated, because it was not liquid, it was foundational. Entire civilizations depended on the resources he controlled. Yet he did not use that power to conquer the world. He used it to build one. Mosques like Jinguareba still stand today. Universities expanded. Libraries grew. Architects, poets, and scholars returned with him to Mali, enriching a civilization already alive with thought and creativity. European mapmakers, hearing tales of his wealth, began drawing Mali onto their charts. And there he was, Mansa Musa, seated on a throne, holding gold, crowned not just with power, but with recognition. So why was this story nearly lost? Why were generations taught a version of history that left no room for African greatness? Because history is not just what happens, it is what is remembered. And too often, Africa's achievements were ignored, minimized, or erased. But the manuscripts of Timbuktu survived. The mosques still stand. The stories endured through oral tradition when written records were dismissed. Mansa Musa ruled for 25 years, and when he died, he left behind more than wealth. He left behind proof. Proof that African civilizations were not waiting to be awakened by outsiders. They were already awake, already building, already shaping the world. His life teaches us something timeless, that true greatness is not measured by how much you accumulate, but by what you create with what you have. Mansa Musa walked across the desert carrying the wealth of nations, but what he left behind was far more valuable than gold. He left knowledge, opportunity, inspiration. His story is not just African history, it is human history. And it reminds us that brilliance has always existed where some were taught not to look, waiting patiently to be remembered.